Good afternoon. Thanks for coming back to watch this video that I was telling you about earlier that I was going to come do. Hey, so I have something really interesting. The timing of it couldn't be more profound in my opinion, and I truly want to share this historical information with you because it helps to reveal what Jesus was doing when he drove out the demons into the pigs and they went into the sea. And this will help clarify it. And we've been talking about King Charles III and how he's likely going to be the one that the Sanhedrin will want to sit upon the throne of Judah, and they will become members of the Commonwealth so they can put him as king over the world, and then they would become the world's judges, the world's Supreme Court, with the 70 nations representatives underneath him. And we know that King Charles III just got out of the hospital from prostate surgery, and it said that the medical treatment has not been significant enough to require any constitutional changes for the king's role as head of state. There has been no need for counselors of state who can stand in when a monarch's seriously ill. So they're not even putting that into place. Hey, the things that I have talked about, they are going to come to pass. There's no doubt at all. There is actually an exhibit coming to Britain starting on February 1st of 2024 called Legion. And it's all about Rome and the Roman soldiers and certain soldier that wrote letters that still survive to this day about his experience in the Roman military. What's really interesting is that this exhibition is called Legion. It's in Britain starting February 1st. The timing could not be more profound given the fact that April 22nd is Passover evening, the time that the Jews would want to offer the red heifer, to obtain the ashes, of the red heifer, and make the blood covenant with many. And so if this happens at the end of April, it's interesting that this exhibit of Rome happens at the British Museum starting February 1st called Legion. And Legion was the demons that came out of the man that was in the cave, that Jesus allowed the demons to go into the pigs, and then they rushed down the hill and they all drowned, about 2,000 of them. Now, incredibly, in this battle that happened where a lot of the Roman soldiers were slaughtered, and it was kind of the beginning of the end of the Roman control over the world, they excavated, they found the actual body armor of a Roman soldier right there near where they built this tower to commemorate this battle of the Romans. And so this exhibition will be showing these Roman artifacts, including a shield and this coat of armor that was worn by a Roman soldier, and part of the piece of the helmet that comes down over the ear. So the introduction to Legion, Life in the Roman Army, as is stated by the British Museum, it says, while males of noble birth were expected to serve as part-time soldiers, the bulk of the Roman army was a professional army of commoners. Most stories of the Roman Empire describe the history of powerful men, but Legion takes a different course. This exhibition focuses on the experiences of ordinary soldiers, both the citizen legionnaires and non-citizen auxiliaries, as well as their families. Following the life of one legionary whose letters home have survived the centuries, Claudius Terentianus, the exhibition will take visitors on a journey from enlistment to retirement. Over several letters, Terentianus recounts his failed attempt to join the legions in about AD 110. He writes home asking for clothing and equipment and reports his struggles to fit in. While hoping for a transfer, he was deployed to the Eastern Front in Trajan's War with Parthia. He eventually achieved his goal, becoming a soldier of the legion, as he called himself, and his survival into retirement. So here is some information about Roman enlistment in the Roman army. Regular pay and social status proved attractive incentives for potential new recruits to the Roman army. Citizens who became soldiers would benefit from regular wages during their service. On their retirement, would receive a pension worth a decade's pay. But most of the empire's inhabitants were not so privileged. Leaving aside the desperate circumstances of the enslaved, most of the freeborn lacked the social status and legal rights of Roman citizens. They could still join the Roman army, albeit for less pay. For non-citizens, the reward of Roman citizenship after 25 years military service offered social transformation, not only for themselves, but for their families too. There were strict physical and social requirements for recruitment, that they had to be men of at least 5 feet 7 inches tall, and though there was no minimum age requirement, they had to join before the age of 35. All recruits needed a letter of recommendation and faced grueling training. Free people from all over the empire enlisted, creating a diverse army. Soldiers were often posted to unknown places, far from home, serving alongside people from unfamiliar cultures. Now they show a gold stater coin. Roman Republic, circa 225 to 212 BC. And it says, and I really want you to hear this part of this, because I'm going to share about Jesus driving out the demons into the pigs. Once they took the oath, sacramentum, recruits could no longer back out, and most were committed to serve in the Roman army for at least 25 years. Even citizen soldiers lost their rights to legally contest military discipline involving corporal and capital punishment. The gold coin shows the oath being taken by a recruit. Now listen to this. 2 Roman soldiers stand facing each other, with swords resting on a sacrificial pig, held by an attendant who takes the oath. After that, medical discharge, retirement, or death in service were the only honorable means of escape. Once they were sworn in, an ambitious soldier could seek different roles within the ranks. Marines seem to have been the least desirable branch of the non-citizen auxiliary service, but would take citizens like Terentianus, who were unable to join the legions. Terentianus yearned to transfer to a land-based auxiliary cohort. Besides the extra hazards of seafaring Marines, shore duties were often arduous or unsociable and included road building, firefighting, and guarding Rome's grain supply. With the right social connections, soldiers could get transferred. Better paid regiments included the auxiliary cavalry, whose glamour could even attract legionnaires. Even having or learning a useful skill, such as carpentry, could exempt soldiers from menial duties. Otherwise, they had to rely on promotion. Soldiers hoping for promotion needed to be among the most able to have the ability to read and write. The coveted role of standard bearer was only attainable to those who were numerate as well as literate. Since they kept the soldiers' accounts, standard bearers earned double the pay of ordinary soldiers, while centurions, the only officer class within reach of commoners, could earn 15 to 60 times the basic wage. Cavalrymen were among the most coveted roles in the army. They received extra pay needed to maintain their horse and its equipment, and they were assigned fewer chores and had the chance to participate in spectacular displays wearing special face mask helmets, sometimes referred to as cavalry parade helmets. Soldiers had to buy and maintain their own arms and armor. New or second-hand purchases could be made from fort armories or sometimes from local craftsmen. Some veterans kept their arms instead of selling them back to the armory, and those could be passed on. Used equipment maintained and serviced for a long time, passing down multitude generations. They could even be modified and updated. They show a bronze helmet, Germany, 10 BC to 30 AD, private collection in the UK. And kind of interesting, Jesus being crucified in 30 AD. What if this was one of the helmets of the centurion at the cross? That would be interesting. Such is the case with this helmet from Eich, Germany. Its original form was current at the turn of the 1st century AD, but has modifications consistent with helmet design from half a century later. A Roman armorer has trimmed and reshaped the neck guard and added a carry handle. This savvy reuse suggests long service. Another helmet in the exhibition has been scratched with the names of 4 soldiers, suggesting potentially up to a century of use. However, post-modification, the Eich helmet carries only one owner's name, Marcus Auruntius from Aquileia, Italy, who served in the century of Sempronius. Soldiers endured extensive rough living before they ever reached the battlefield. This included months of marching and nightly camps. Groups of 8 men shared a tent as well as duties in camp. Tents became a temporary home for soldiers and emperors alike, and even, on occasion, empresses. Julia Domna, wife of Emperor Septimius Severus, was known for traveling with her husband on campaign and was extremely popular with the soldiers. She was given the title of Mater Castrorum, mother of the camp. They show a bust of her and her distinctive hairstyle, and in this case a wig with wisp of her hair near the ears. The curve along the back of the wig gives it the appearance of a helmet, perhaps a deliberate attempt on her part to display her connection to the army. Roman legions deployed in highly organized battalions and shield walls. Their battle tactics and formations allowed them to face off against even the seemingly unstoppable heavy stock cavalry of their eastern enemies. Cataphract cavalry used armor that covered the whole body, both man and horse. This armor horse blanket was a find from Dura Europus, a site in modern-day Syria. It was lost when the site was destroyed by the Sasanians in 256 AD to 67. It uses scales larger than those on human armor. And the fort life, the Roman army built forts wherever a more permanent military presence might be required along the empire's frontiers or in restless areas to prevent local uprisings. Their standardized design mirrored that of Roman towns, but the barracks and other military buildings, civilian townships with bathhouses, shops, and taverns developed just beyond the walls. Soldiers could enjoy private life outside military duties with their families, both official and unofficial. Objects relating to domestic life and even leisure time are common finds from forts, such as this sandstone gaming board and glass gaming counters from Vindolanda. Ordinary soldiers below the rank of centurion were not officially allowed to marry, but they still formed meaningful relationships with women and had families. Enslaved men and women and children also inhabited the fort, with some even traveling with soldiers on campaign. Evidence of women and children and the enslaved connected to the army is common on forts and funerary iconography. This tombstone of the daughter of Cessens, an imagnifer, a form of Roman standard-bearer, depicts her reclining on a couch while a young enslaved servant girl serves her. The names of servants are rarely recorded. In this case, Crescen's daughter's name also does not survive on the tombstone, so both women remain nameless. Some of the most evocative pieces of evidence of families living in forts are the many shoes from Vindolanda belonging to men, women, and children. Among those who they will display in the exhibition are a pair of small leather children's shoes. Rome conquered and assimilated an unprecedented expanse of territories. The people of these territories, provinces, became subject to Roman law, and the soldiers were responsible for enforcing that law, in particular by enacting punishments. This is kind of what the Sanhedrin that's revived is going to do when they start enforcing the laws of their Talmud and Zohar and other books. They're going to do the same thing Rome did. There was a limited number of soldiers to police a vast empire, which would lead to oppressive and exploitative forms of control. As enforcers, Roman soldiers were unsurprisingly unpopular and could be at risk of retribution. Regimental rosters could list soldiers killed by bandits. Full-scale revolts were sporadic, but when they happened, there was often a large toll, both on the army and the locals. In AD 9, a Germanic tribal leader's son, Arminius, commissioned as a Roman cavalry commander, betrayed his employers to lead a revolt against Roman control. Joining forces with his native tribes, he destroyed 3 entire Roman legions in AD 9 at the Teutoburg forest, halting the takeover of his homeland. Now this is the battle I want to tell you about. More than 40 years later in Britain, Queen Boudica of the Iceni tribe led a less successful revolt, which resulted in the burning down of nascent Roman settlements, including St. Albans, Colchester, and London. The armor below is the oldest and most complete Roman segmental cuirass, the form of body armor often depicted on legionnaires seen on Roman monuments such as Trajan's Column. Found in the Teutoburg forest, it is believed to have belonged to a soldier killed in Arminius' revolt. The bones of its wearer had long decomposed to chemical traces, but the almost skeletal form of this flexible but sturdy Roman armor is an evocative reminder of the individuals killed in the revolt. So check this segmented armor. This is incredible. At the end of the exhibition, we explore soldiers' retirement and what their lives and legacy might be after their time in the Army. It is estimated that around 50% of soldiers survived illness and violence to reach retirement. Citizen soldiers received a lucrative bonus on their retirement, enough to buy land or live comfortably. Retired auxiliary soldiers received their citizenship, the start of their and their family's social transformation. As proof of this status, they were given bronze military diplomas, durable documents to carry with them in the future. The example below belonged to an Egyptian-based fleet rower named Marcus Papirius. Contrary to the impression given in epics such as Ben-Hur, Roman galley oarsmen were free men and expected to fight like soldiers in battle. Even as a lowly rower, Marcus Papirius had a right to citizenship following his years of service, and the same as any Marine or fully land-based soldier. The document specifies that the citizenship was extended to both Papirius's wife, Tupaia, and son, Carpinius. So this exhibition at the British Museum in London will be called Legion, Life in the Roman Army. From family life on the fort to the brutality of the battlefield, experience Rome's war machine through the people who knew it best. So the Roman soldiers, the recruits, had to take this oath and to be in the legion of the Roman army. And on this gold coin, it showed the oath being taken by a recruit. And let me restate, it said, 2 Roman soldiers standing facing each other with swords, resting on a sacrificial pig held by an attendant who takes the oath. And after that, there was no way you could get out of the army after you took the oath. You were stuck for 25 years. So what did we see in the gospel account in Mark 5:1 through 13? Jesus finds that this man is possessed by a multitude of demons who give the collective name of Legion. That was the Roman legion, the 10th Roman legion that actually crucified the Messiah. And fearing that Jesus will drive them out of the world and into the abyss, they beg Jesus instead to cast them into a herd of pigs on a nearby hill, which he does. And the pigs then rush into the sea and are drowned. So this Roman oath for a Roman recruit to become a Roman legion soldier, this oath was taken with the swords on a sacrificial pig. So these demons were in the legion of the Roman army, and they asked to be cast into the pigs that were then sacrificed and hurled into the sea and drowned. The astonishing timing of the Roman legion exhibit going in London on February 1st, at a time when Passover in April, on the 22nd, is Passover evening, when it's the night of watching for the redemption, the night of hoping for God's appearing to save them and bring them redemption in Israel. This is when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane telling the disciples, couldn't you just watch 1 hour on the night of watching for the redemption? And of course, the Roman legion came out to take him as a thief and treated him like he was a thief. So those who aren't watching on the night of watching, he will come as a thief to those not watching. Now, of course, we find this story in Mark 5, and I'll start on verse 1. On the other side of the sea, they arrived in the region of the Gerasenes. As soon as Jesus got out of the boat, he was met by a man with an unclean spirit who was coming from the tombs. This man had been living in the tombs and could no longer be restrained even with chains. Though he was often bound with chains and shackles, he had broken the chains and shattered the shackles. Now there was no one with the strength to subdue him. Night and day in the tombs and in the mountains he kept crying out and cutting himself with stones. When the man saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees before him, and he shouted in a loud voice, "What do you want to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you before God not to torture me." For Jesus had already declared, "Come out of this man, you unclean spirit." "What is your name?" Jesus asked. "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." and he begged Jesus repeatedly not to send them out of that region. There on the nearby hillside, a large herd of pigs was feeding. So the demons begged Jesus, "Send us to the pigs so that we may enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and went into the pigs, and the herd of about 2,000 rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it described what had happened to the demon-possessed man and also to the pigs. And the people began to beg Jesus to leave their region. And as he was getting in the boat, the man who had been possessed by the demons begged to go with him. But Jesus would not allow him. "Go home to your own people," he said, "and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." So the man went away and began to proclaim throughout the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. So when Jesus tells him, "Go home to your own people," could this have been a recruit? I mean, he was a Roman soldier that was an enslaved Roman soldier recruit that had been recruited to be in the legion Roman army and had taken the oath with the swords over the sacrificial pig, and he was possessed by demons that bound him to be part of the Roman army for his life for 25 years, and he maybe he deserted and he was living in the tomb, so he was in shackles and chains by punishment. So Jesus, the true King of Kings, freed him from his bondage of the Roman legion army and sent the demons called legion into the sacrificial pigs, of which he had taken the oath. And now he drowned them in the sea, so they were no more. Just like the Egyptian army when the Hebrews crossed the Exodus crossing. And so this miracle actually shows that the Lord was merciful even to those Roman centurions. And we know that there was another Roman centurion that was a witness of the Messiah. So truly, the information from the British exhibition of Legion of the Roman Army gives you a complete explanation, if you can figure it out, that this is what was going on when Jesus cast out the legion of demons in the Roman soldier that was probably an enslaved man that the Roman army recruited to work for them and demanded he take the oath with the pig. Unbelievable. And all of this coming at the time that we're expecting some events with King Charles III in Israel come April at Passover. Okay, so now I want to tell you about this story about the Roman legionnaires. And this is a really incredible story. It says, the title says, "Their heads were nailed to the trees. What was life and death like for Roman legionnaires? It was the defeat that traumatized Rome, leaving 15,000 soldiers slaughtered in a German field. As a major show explores this horror and more, our writer finds traces of the fallen by a forest near the Rhine. It is one of the most chilling passages in Roman literature. Germanicus, the Emperor Tiberius's nephew, is leading reprisals in the deeply forested areas east of the Rhine. When he decides to visit the scene of the catastrophic defeat 6 years before of his fellow Roman Quintilius Varus, the historian Tacitus describes what Germanicus finds: the ghastly human wreckage of a supposedly unbeatable army deep in the Teutoburg forest. So this is the battle I mentioned earlier when I was giving you the information from the exhibition. On the open ground, he writes, were whitening bones of men as they had fled or stood their ground, strewn everywhere or piled in heaps. Near lay fragments of weapons and limbs of horses, and also human heads prominently nailed to trunks of trees. Survivors pointed out the spot where Varus had killed himself, and the place where the military standards had been flaunted by the victors. A living Roman army, writes Tacitus of Germanicus's visit, had come to bury the dead men's bones. No one knew if the remains he was burying belonged to a stranger or a comrade. 3 whole legions, perhaps 15,000 men, had been slaughtered, as well as the slaves, women, and children who would probably have been with them. So my guess is that this was a Roman slave that was in the tombs that had the legion demons that he was possessed by, because he had taken the oath over the pig. Varus's defeat in AD 9 resonated in the later Roman imaginarium as a moment of unparalleled horror and humiliation on terrain of their own choosing. The Roman military, professional, numerous, disciplined, well-equipped, and proved unbeatable for centuries, but like many supposedly superior fighting forces since, from the Americas and their allies in Afghanistan to the Russians trundling south towards Kiev, they were vulnerable when tricked, ambushed, trapped in a bottleneck, and cut off from reinforcements. The Varian disaster, as the Romans called it, did not mean that the empire ceased expanding, but it did mean that Rome's borders never extended east of the Rhine. It had other consequences too. Much later, during early stirrings of national self-consciousness in the 19th century, the victorious rebel leader, Arminius, began to be seen as the founding figure of German nationhood. His story was troublingly appropriated by the Nazis and is being used again today by the far-right party Alternative für Deutschland, AfD, and one of its most prominent figures, Björn Höcke, has even been called a new Hermann, the modernized name for Arminius. Ancient history perverted into myth still vibrates in the present. And they show a sobering spot, the viewing tower, and it was in this location that they found that body armor of the Roman centurion. The site of the battle was almost certainly at Kalkrisi in today's Lower Saxony, where in 2002 a museum and battlefield park were opened. There is little to see in this wide field ringed by traces of what once was dense forest, but it is nevertheless a sobering spot. It was killing fields as far as the eye can see, says Stefan Burmeister, the museum's director, describing the aftermath of the ambush. Bones and bodies may have decayed, but the soil is full of phosphates, the chemical traces of the dead. And if you strike the ground with a shovel, he says, there is a fountain of finds. Rising above the museum is a viewing tower from which the terrain becomes easier to read. The Romans were probably hemmed into a narrow strip of land between swamps to the north and ravines that cut through the chalk hills to the south. The place is deliberately free of any attempted reconstruction. The museum itself is a plain, minimalist building clad in oxidized metal, recalling the rusting iron of weaponry that would have been strewn across the battlefield. A pathway of metal slabs, some inscribed with fragments of Latin, runs across the site. It's a difficult question how to deal with such a dark historical place, says Burmeister. There was so much violence, so much brutality here. Thousands of people killed. We don't want to make it too positive. By contrast, 100 kilometers to the southeast stands the Hermannsdenkmal, a towering statue, Arminius Hermann, completed in 1875 in a spot once thought to be the battle site. Rising to a height of 53 meters, the monument radiates shrill aggression. To borrow a phrase from Neil MacGregor's book, Germany, Memories of a Nation, raised in the era of the Franco-Prussian War, the statue waves his sword in the general direction of France. These days, AFD members sometimes gather there. One of the paradoxes of the Kalkrisi killing field, says Burmeister, is that most of the archaeological finds, though numerous, are tiny, fragmentary. The theory, he says, is that the dead were systematically stripped of their possessions. We have only the leftovers. Each of these Roman soldiers was a walking resource deposit. But there are exceptions, among them a striking visor from a cavalry helmet in the shape of a man's delicate lipped face. And there is something even more remarkable, an extraordinary survivor that is about to go on display in Legion, a major new exhibition at the British Museum in London. A complete Roman cuirass, uniquely well preserved, and that is the coat of armor. It is the cuirass or body armor was discovered right outside the museum in 2018. And that's the museum I'm going to show you. It was towards the end of an excavation and entirely a surprise when a metal detector beeped, indicating that something substantial was buried deep in the soil. A huge block of earth was extracted and 3D X-rayed, a process that took 2 days. After that, it was clear what they had. Crushed and fragmentary, but spectacular. The only very distant equivalent is pieces of armor found in Corbridge, Northumberland, though there is a promising brand new find from Vienna in France yet to be studied. The work of digging up the 403 fragments, of identifying how they belong together, and of gently removing the corrosion from the surface was a labor of love that took 2 years. On a good day, says Burmeister, we would clean 1 square centimeter. Why did it survive? Why was it not taken from the battlefield like everything else? My interpretation is that this Roman legionary survived the battle and was paraded as a trophy, he says. Shackles were found nearby. It is a grim notion. Well, the Roman legion was in the tomb with shackles and chains because he was forced to be a legionnaire. There's no doubt about it, and Jesus set him free. Not far away from Kalkrisi, in the delightful small Roman museum in Halterm am See, it is good to be reminded that serving as a Roman soldier was a career choice, and a life, albeit a career that brought with it enormous risks for the soldiers themselves, given the often violent exploitation of the people and lands that came under their occupation. Here on the site of what is thought to have been the Roman military base of Aliso are pots and pans, wine strainers, and glass perfume bottles. Keys and table legs, veiny ceramic phalluses. Scholars disagree on their purpose, although the prevailing suggestion is that they were for good luck. And even the lid of a medicine jar stating its contents as the British root, and this is thought to be sorrel, rich in vitamins and iron. This sense of ordinariness, that a soldier's career might be mundane and involve family life as well as violence, is a point strongly made in the British Museum exhibition, which takes as its spine the professional lives of 2 real soldiers from Egypt, Appian, and Terentianus, whose letters on papyrus recounting everything from career anxieties to request for boots and socks were preserved in the dry African sand. As in the modern Russian Federation, enlistment into the legions for less well-off citizens was a way out of poverty, the benefits worth even the dire risks. For non-citizens, serving as an auxiliary ended with the significant retirement benefit of enfranchisement if it did not end in death. These men ate and drank, lived and loved. One of the most moving objects in the exhibition comes from cold, windy Britain, a monument raised to a woman called Regina. It means queen. One of the Catalani tribe who lived in southeast England. It's clear from the inscription dedicated by her husband, Barates, that she was first his slave, then his freedwoman and wife. He was a Syrian from Palmyra at the opposite end of the empire, and the words are in two languages, Latin and Palmyrian. Regina and Barates ended up together on the northwest frontier of the Roman Empire at the fort of Arbea at what is now South Shields on Tyneside. She is shown sitting in a wicker chair, queenly like her name, wearing a necklace and bracelet, cradling a spindle in her lap, and with a box of wool at her feet. She died at age 30. Carved in stone after her death, Regina gives us a gentle, fleeting glimpse of her life. And the Legion, Life of the Roman Army, is at the British Museum, London, from February 1st through June 23rd. Incredible timing. So in this exhibition, we truly see clues that reveal what was going on with Jesus freeing this forced Roman recruit that was shackled and crying out from the tombs for help. And when he saw Jesus, he ran and fell on his knees. He wanted to be free. And he knew there was only one way of freedom, and that freedom was the Messiah of Israel, Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And so God showed that he was not partial to just Jews and healing them, but he had the mercy and love and grace of all people, no matter what their race, what their nationality, that they could come kneel at his feet and ask him for help, and he would hear your prayer and he would answer you. I think of the fact that if this red heifer ceremony does take place at Passover, this is really a truly revealing story. The fact that the king could participate in that, and I told you about the revelation about the covenant with many in a blood covenant of the red heifer that can never take away the uncleanness or the sins of the Jewish people worldwide. And they would be trading out the blood covenant of many that the King Jesus was crucified on the cross made with the covenant with many worldwide to save us from our sins, and the law which brings forth death because it can never give you salvation. So during this red heifer ceremony, what Israel would be doing, the Sanhedrin would be doing, is strengthening the ancient covenant that God had with his people. They would be making it stronger. And they would be agreeing to obey all the commandments of the law. And if they slip up on even one, this could be punishment by the judges of the Sanhedrin. So, you break the law, you pay the price. Plus, they want to be the world Supreme Court, and everything is setting up like you can't believe. So I just wanted to share this incredible story about what are the odds of King Charles III possibly being the one that will sit on the throne of Judah over there, and they will make him king as their anointed one with the olive oil from Jerusalem. And this exhibit of Legion coming to London right before the red heifer ceremony happens. and revealing what Jesus was doing. So the freedom is found in the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So give your heart to him and your life to him completely. If you want to be redeemed to go back into the eternal promised land, that is the only way, through Jesus, through the Messiah, and you will be saved. It's such incredible timing. I just cannot believe it. So with that, I'll say thank you for watching. Thank you for coming to watch this video after my just brief video earlier letting you know I was going to film this. And I hope you found it fascinating. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And thank you for subscribing to the new subscribers. And thank you for blessings that a couple of people have sent me. I truly, truly appreciate that. God bless you. And you know, the donation links in the book information are all below in the description box if you would like to read about Jesus for the last days. And if you insult the Holy Spirit by slandering somebody's book that you haven't read, that you don't know what it's about, and that it was guided by the Holy Spirit, you may find yourself under some sort of judgment. So I would be very careful doing that. And I'm just responding to a couple of things. So, anyway, just keeping it real.